Everybody, can you take a seat, please? So when you finish, these guys are leaving and we're going to put some chairs on for you to do the final panel, so there'll be a little bit. Welcome, everybody. Please take a seat. So I've worked with Hector on TechShare Pro for about 73 years. And this is between you and me, this is his dream session. We've talked about business being part of accessibility, and this is, I say this to people about you, Hector. I think that you're the person pushing hardest on that in the community, and you're doing an amazing job. So this session is all about engaging with business, how we engage with business. So we're going to have various conversations on stage, and then afterwards we're going to sort of reflect on what we've learned. So you'll be here until about 5:15. Got various rehearsed parts to that, some coming in on video and other parts. But we're going to start with Nicole Dezen, who is the Chief Partner Officer from Microsoft, who's going to introduce the subject.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Dezen, Chief Partner Officer at Microsoft. Thank you so much to the TechShare Pro team for inviting me here to open today's important discussion. Our mission at Microsoft is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And we believe that technology has the promise and the potential of creating a more accessible and inclusive future. The inclusion of people with disabilities in the fabric of Microsoft has helped us build the most inclusive products we've ever created. And our strategy for modern technologies such as the cloud, AI, and co-pilots only increase our ambition and our commitment to inclusion throughout our portfolio. As I reflect on my own learning journey, I'm so proud to serve as the executive sponsor accelerating our global commercial accessibility agenda with our Microsoft partner ecosystem. I believe that technology companies have a vital role to play in building a more inclusive and accessible world, not only for people with disabilities, but for everyone across all industries. Technology can be such a powerful tool for empowerment, innovation, and social change, but only if we design it with diversity and inclusion in mind. So I'd like to kick off today's discussion by sharing how Microsoft and our partners are engaging with business leaders on disability and accessibility, and how we can work together to create a more inclusive future. Our accessibility team has listened and learned from our customers and our partners, establishing 3 clear horizons for us to consider and for our partners to deliver against. Horizon 1, adopt technology through the lens of inclusion and accessibility, leveraging the accessible experiences we build into Microsoft products. Horizon 2, establish, build, and test capabilities in your business, ensuring that employees with disabilities can access critical business infrastructure. Horizon 3, innovate your product experiences in the cloud, using AI and cognitive services to deliver greater accessibility for customers by building a brand that values digital inclusion. Simply put, our partner ecosystem can help to build a more digitally inclusive society, and we're committed to making this a priority. Companies that champion disability inclusion often outperform competitors on profitability and value creation, and I look forward to supporting you in this mission. Thank you.
So, just as a way of introduction, my name is Hector Minto, and I'm the lead accessibility evangelist for Microsoft globally, and we run a program called GCAP, which is all about us engaging with our customers around the world. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we started doing that to some scale, and we saw patterns emerging. Accessibility is this enormous topic. You know, disability inclusion is an enormous topic. And yet everybody was trying to, what we would have called, kind of boil the ocean. We're trying to solve accessibility, but everybody has their own part to play, from the people who build and test technologies, from the accessibility professionals, through to the people who are just trying to build great D&I programs around disability. And we started to see patterns emerge. The challenge with this topic, if we can just go to my first slide on the Horizon strategy, is it sits in everybody's part of the business. There is no one part of the business that uniquely owns disability or accessibility, and they're different. They're different things. And yet, whenever we engage with organizations, when we're trying to scale through the biggest army of people committed to accessibility, Microsoft's sales force around the world, they were having different conversations every time they went in. And we cannot scale impact with having different conversations everywhere we go. Not enough of our sales force are going to be in a position where they can listen with nuance to the conversation that companies are trying to get to on accessibility and make progress. And so what we've done through our GCAP program is started to build an account planning process called Horizon 1, 2, 3. And Horizon 1 is adopting, I'll get it right from the start. Horizon 1 is adopting technology through the lens of disability. If you do not know how to magnify, how to turn captions on in a meeting, how to help somebody with dyslexia access text, how to do all of the things that are routinely part of not just our technology, but modern consumer technology, then how can we possibly make progress in supporting our colleagues with disabilities? And that sits firmly within HR and IT. Yeah? These HR IT leaders are the ones that can really start to help us make really easy early progress on supporting colleagues with disabilities in every workforce. If you don't know whether you employ people with disabilities in your organization, you do. And therefore, it just makes sense to have this conversation about adopt technology through this lens. The challenge for us as a team as we engaged, though, was when we got beyond turning the captions on in Teams and showing people the next great thing in Windows, was where do we go next? And this is Horizon 2. Once you've established that people with disabilities work within your organization, what about your digital infrastructure? Can people read their payslips, take their training? Can people actually survive and feel successful working in an organization only if the technology is accessible? And that's where we have to start bringing in procurement. We have to start bringing in the CTO to think about, do we have the skills in this organization to buy, test, and build accessible solutions? And obviously, your legal teams have to start thinking about, are we legally providing an accessible workplace for our colleagues? Don't stop there. Because compliance for many organizations is not going to be a driver for give you the momentum you need. And that's why the third horizon of Innovate is really this understanding that whatever industry you're in, and we've covered it so nicely in this morning's session around the regulations, every industry is having to think about its digital accessibility deliverables. Whether it's retail, healthcare, education, whatever, banking, we're here at HSBC today, we've got to think about our externalities on accessibility. And the teams that need to get behind that, that's going to have to be our brand leaders, our product leaders, our commercial parts of our business. We want to create a resilient infrastructure for all organizations to open up every room of the house to have this conversation about disability. And to do so, we need to be having a different conversation with business leaders as we engage with them. And this has been our biggest revelation as Microsoft, is that if I go into a CHRO and start talking about automated testing of accessibility in documents, I might lose them, okay? So we've got to give people the narrative and the script they need in terms of and make them successful in what they're trying to deliver. So we have assembled a stellar cast of people who have been on their own journey, humble journey, right? Yeah, like we've all come at it from kind of different positions, but these are professionals that I have met in my engagement with customers around the world who have brought new perspectives to me and given me confidence to talk about some of the topics that aren't pure accessibility, but what the progress they're trying to make in their organization. So I will ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Ruth, hopefully, has joined us remotely. Hey, Ruth. I'm so pleased to see you, Ruth. To start off with, I really want to just give everybody their opportunity to just sort of say the first time they unpicked what accessibility meant to them within job role. So going through the horizons and trying to stick to the horizons a little bit, I'm going to ask you, David, to start us off.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Howorth, and I work for BP in a colleague experience role, actually sitting in workplace. So I'm not part of the DEI structure. I'm a supporter, an advocate in what we do. What is different, workplace sits in people and culture, our HR team. So there is very much a lens of how we manage our workplaces through the people kind of centric approach. When I first, I'm going to flip the question if you don't mind. Actually, in 2007, I worked for another organization. Well, actually, I did a startup And that's when I first noticed a lack of accessibility and a lack of inclusivity. We were trying to build a business in kind of managing receptions, switchboard help desks for organisations like these, and trying to recruit people into that market. It was just difficult. One, we couldn't caption and attract, and two, our clients didn't want those roles front and centre. And I know that's quite a while, 2007, and that was when the first time it started to strike me saying, this was wrong. When I joined BP 2 years ago, having the people lens come through the people and culture, it suddenly kind of woke it all up again for me of what can we do and how can workplace be the glue between HR, digital workplace and the tools, and how can we make it alive and real to everybody that sits within. So I suppose that's kind of where I've got to at the moment.
Brilliant. Ruth, maybe you could go next.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd say that this is a great example of making everything accessible, right? Because I only found out last night that I couldn't travel today, and I'm still able to take part, so thank you. I guess what I'd say is I came to accessibility through my kids. So we have a household full of neurodivergent conditions within our house. My daughter's diagnosis led me to being late diagnosed ADHD and autistic. I am a finance person by background. I work for Grant Thornton. There's about 5,500 people. And we're a people business that depends on our people being able to be brilliant every day. So I guess I've taken my passion for accessibility, my background as a finance person, and I've used that to say, right, how do we make sure that we get the right investment, the right tools to our people so they can be brilliant?
Brilliant. Thanks, Ruth. We're going to come back to this. And John, if you could finish us off.
Gosh, so yes, first of all, I work for KPMG next door. It wasn't a long walk, which is good. I'm one of the chief technology officers in KPMG, basically. But I've spent, I suppose, 20 plus years in large consulting organizations, client-facing, delivering change and transformation with technology. And actually, interestingly, much like Ruth, I first came across this in two ways, actually. One is at work. So we were delivering, and it was in fact a contact center. I was leading a project to deliver a contact center for a major public sector organization. And literally in the last 2 weeks of testing, before it went live, somebody said, oh, how is the person who is sight impaired going to cope with the solutions that you're actually putting out there? And to say it was a shock when that was actually put in front of me and my team it was early 2000s, that is an understatement. It was nothing we'd ever encountered before. And I'm afraid I'm going to do another comparison. Like Ruth, I have a family full of people with letters after their name, like ADHD, and I didn't get away lightly either. So I didn't know what was causing my experience of the world at that point either. So I had no relationship with disability or accessibility needs, even though I really did have a big relationship with it. That changed my perspective fully. We actually found a solution, we implemented it, it worked amazingly. And I think from then on, for me, this area has just been another set of requirements that you have to take when you're building a new solution or implementing something, which is easy to say.
Yeah. So we have a spread of professionals who sit across those first two horizons. And I'm going to start with you, David. I mean, the first time we met was actually, I think you were maybe like person number 30 I'd met at BP to have a conversation about accessibility, from inclusive design to D&I. And our account team brought us all together in the MTC. And our account teams, just so you know, Microsoft account teams are having different conversations with you and your organizations at a level where they can kind of pull together people from all sorts of disciplines. And I remember walking into the room, I didn't know who you were at the time, by the way. I'd spent a lot of time with your D&I community, in particular Tucker, who's blind,
Yep.
Paralympian. My swimming coach, I'm just going to say it. My virtual swimming coach through the pandemic is a Paralympian. I'm going to say that.
He loves you as well.
I love him. He like
There's no bromance going on there.
Yeah. It's mutual. Anyway, but there was this moment where we had the captions on routinely in the MTC, the Windows 11 captions, and you just turned around in front of everybody and went, "God, they're good, aren't they?" And it was just like this moment where you just went, like, "How did you do that? I need to know about that." And I was like, "What do you do?" Colleague experience. And I was like, yeah, you do need to know this is available. So there's this light bulb moment where we kind of showcase what's possible. And then when people are exposed to the topic in various guises, you start thinking about your job. You don't stop thinking about the product of Microsoft. You start thinking, how do I apply this to it? And so what's kicked on from there is this coordination from the Microsoft account team. They ping me every day, just so you know, David, they're like, but it's like, okay, we want a little bit of advice on this, and can we get progress on this? And it feels to me like you're starting this at-scale awareness program around accessibility.
Yes, and as with many large organisations, there are lots of people involved, and I kind of come a different angle. I will engage with the different teams and try and do it, and I sit there in workplace going, right, okay, that's great that we're building this. How do we bring that to the people? How do we make it real that every meeting room you go into, it just automatically happens? And I think for me was, how do we create an awareness of the accessibility tools that I had no idea, because I didn't click on the little button at the top because no one had told me what it was about. And then I found out, wow, this is amazing. And like many people, realised I was slightly dyslexic due to because of my kids, and that's how I kind of got made aware. And suddenly I went, well, this makes life easier. And then I realised, and then I think it was yourself. Was another moment in that meeting was, actually, it's not just about me. Using this really helps the people I'm trying to communicate with, so I should be using it for their benefit as well. And then it got us thinking, right, how do we bring it to life? How do we bring this so colleagues can get involved? So I am a part of the accessibility BRG, or ERG, and which was really eye-opening again because of the different challenges this amazing team have that are so positive. And they helped develop with us, and I could do it from a workplace, a accessibility room where people can come in, try the technology, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, desk. So I brought the ergonomics team in, so can we look at how the desks and the chairs, and bring it all into one place. And then then I thought, job done. And then I realized, oh no, we need to train people to tell them how to portray this and teach it. So we then had to go out to 3 different teams, bring them all together who worked completely different streams, and how do we bring that into this seamless service of doing it. So as a colleague goes in there, it just happens. And I think those are the little things that, and then we've got to try and work out how we're going to deploy that globally, which is challenges, other challenges. So we are at the beginning of that journey. You know, we've tested it, we've played with it, we think we've got the right solution. We just now need to work out how do we make it happen. What's a small version for a small office? Because we don't necessarily have rooms that we can just turn into that. So it's looking at those aspects of bringing it to life. But it's not just one asset for me. It's not just, I know you want to talk digital, but it's not just the digital. It's the physical side of it, and then also the human side of it. How do we create that human connection between our workplace teams and IT teams to colleagues that maybe have disability? And I heard some great speakers earlier on. I had real imposter syndrome here, sitting here, listening to all these specialists in this field, and then they were talking about, you know, the strategies that they're doing. And I know BP have them, but it's how do I capture those and make them real in the day-to-day piece? And I suppose that's my kind of journey.
That's great. And so just let's keep reverting back to this Horizon thing. This is Horizon 1. It's like, hey, we're doing technology, we're deploying office space. Are we making this accessible? Are we adopting through this lens of disability? Are we really giving this topic the time it deserves? Just quickly, from a partner perspective, tech industry, I have this wonderful role for the UK government ambassador for the tech sector. For you tech companies that are working in the adoption change process and helping organizations with their digital transformation, moving to modern tools, add disability. I mean, like, go do it. Empower the Davids of this world to kind of drive more inclusion and more voice of disability within their organizations. And that is going to take us neatly onto buying accessible, Ruth. Because I remember meeting you, and there's a lot of mutual appreciation. Let's tamp it down a little bit. But I remember, Ruth, you shared with me your kind of, your disability confidence status, the kind of the public things you were saying around disability inclusion as an organization. You've got a wonderful landing page on your website. But I remember when you said to me, are we buying accessible? What role can I play as a financial person within the organization to de-risk us as an organization and start to get better and make sure we're buying with this in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every stage of the journey I've discovered goes in different phases, and buying better is no different. So it's that phase of going, like, what do we know? The answer's always not enough. You go off and find the people that do, and make sure that how you kind of set up the spec for whatever it is you're buying, for your procurement project, your property project, it's built in right from the start. It's back to that, it's the old blueberry muffin analogy. Like, you can't, it's much easier to bake them in at the start. What we're trying to get to over time, which is probably like the Horizon 2, maybe Horizon 3, is actually accessibility is the flower. It's not the blueberries anymore. You can't even make the muffin without accessibility. But you've got to start kind of where you are, acknowledge your limitations, and find the experts that are going to help you get better.
Devs in the accessibility space have been using the blueberry muffin thing for as long as I can remember, Ruth. So to hear a CFO say it, I'm sure is really kind of enlightening to people. I think it's absolutely right. And so just to give some more reflection on our journey with Grant Thornton, again, you brought your CIO in to have the conversation with me. The recent meeting that you were unable to make, Ruth, you brought a partner in to listen in to kind of the vision piece, like what's our long-term vision around accessibility. So what we're starting to see, just to help spell this out to people, is through our first engagements with your ERGs, Ruth, and kind of some of the Horizon 1 stuff, we started to move on to these conversations around procurement, real estate policies, around are our buildings accessible enough. There was also this conversation about we're saying we're disability confident, but are we? And testing your own kind of your own hypothesis, which we're making public commitments to this agenda, but how can we be if we're not living into it in this part of the business? My delight, Ruth, was honestly good. Another business leader with a different perspective buying into the topic and sponsoring this topic within the organization. So every person that I've spoken to within your organization since has got a little Ruth on their shoulder, sort of going, Ruth wants us to be accessible, and it unlocks the conversation I'm having with other people. It's like, I don't have to explain what accessibility is anymore, because there's almost like a cultural commitment that's, I'm sure you're going to tell me it's not as good as it should be, and we all feel like that in this space. But I definitely feel that once we've got that exec sponsorship to the topic, the other people who are driving their bit of the business feel, they can make progress on it. And so thank you. Honestly, I
think it definitely spreads as well. But if you're the first, you're lighting the beacon for people to come towards you, find your people. You've just got to keep going, persist, keep saying it, keep asking the question.
And that's a brilliant thing to mention, because as far as we're concerned with this Horizon strategy, you don't have to start at Horizon 1. We go into some organizations and they're straight into the rigor of testing. And we're like, what's your colleague experience like? Can we roll back to Horizon 1 and get HR to the table here and bring them? Because if you're trying to keep this going, this resilience going in terms of your testing and all this sort of stuff, you're going to feel a lot better if you know what your representation's like in your business. So there's this look back strategy that we've seen with a number of customers, Ruth, as well. And I think that's really what you did for us, actually. You kind of helped us link back into IT, back into your ERGs. You were the exec sponsor for your ERG as well. So it was kind of a natural thing for you to do. Right, turning to you, John. We've known each other an awful long time. You collared me at I think in week 3 at Microsoft.
Blimey. Is it that long?
And I don't think I was ready for you, if I'm honest, John.
No, here it is.
So, the CTO role is critical, right?
Yeah.
To us, this is, do you feel like you've got the digital skills to do this in the organization, or is it getting the requisite level of importance, like bubbling up through the organization?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, I've got 2 or possibly 3 kind of little angles on that. I guess when I think back to the story I was telling earlier, you know, at that point there were accessibility standards, but you couldn't read them. I mean, they made nearly no sense to it, except to about 4 people in the world.
Leave yet?
No, but this was kind of almost literally the first version of you know, some current standards, which are now excellent. So there are now standards. You can go on decent courses for this stuff. There is automated testing. There are a whole range of facilities in place for technologists to actually do a decent job of the basics of this. And I think another thing, which is quite subtle but huge in a way, technology is generally more interoperable. You know, some organizations, Microsoft included, of course, have been more open about what can play with what. And I think that's made a huge difference, because half the problems, speaking personally, that I think we all suffer are not just in the one application we're using, it's because we use this one with this one. And I get confused when I switch screens, and now I've lost the thing I was thinking about, but it won't let me copy and paste it, and it's difficult. So I think the basics are now there. I mean, we can build the skills we need, but it doesn't mean we're going to do anything with them. And I think that's kind of, for me, is the second layer. I think you've got to bake in to the way you lead teams of people doing this stuff that it is an expected part of the way we deliver, that we include this. You've got to bake it in even to your kind of architectural governance that says we won't let a design through that hasn't explicitly considered this and evidenced it. And I also think, and I probably should have said earlier, I'm the partner sponsor of our neurodiversity network in KPMG, and I'm a huge fan of, as Kate knows, of staff networks, and have been for a very long time now, as it feels. And I think the power of supporting a large body of your people to make it feel like it's okay to say who you are and what you need around here is really helpful, because we are actually a minority, those of us that apparently need something different to other people. And getting the right people represented in the room when you're trying to get the requirements is really hard, especially if people don't feel brave enough to stand up and go, well, actually, I could really do with. And even if they do, it might not be practical. So I think that leads me to the final one. I'll be super quick with this. And I do think the final one is strongly about people, because I think you'll get the housekeeping right if you adhere to the standards and all that stuff. But you know, you can build a staircase based on building regulations, and you won't trip up it because the stairs will be the right width and everything. But it won't make you want to stop halfway up and stare at the view, because it's just such a lovely staircase being designed to make you want to do that. And that's where the people come in. And I think over and above the just sticking to the rules bit, which we can teach anybody pretty well, you actually need some great designers and great thinkers. And wouldn't it be good if actually you pulled in some of those people that we're all thinking about here into that process, because then you're always going to carry that thinking into your design cycle, even if they're not explicitly there in the user population. And I think that's, as a CTO, that's something I accidentally end up doing anyway, because having people that think differently around you is great, and it tends to help.
I think there's an interesting conversation to be had here about de-risking having an accessibility policy for organizations. Whereas before, it might have felt like this is going to be a lot of extra work, and do we have the digital skills in our organization to be able to do it? We're seeing a move in the technology sector to more and more organizations building their own technology. We talked about this off stage as well. So you're building your own biz apps, you're building your own, much more of your own technology than buying in necessarily. And therefore, the shift of responsibility is probably moving to, like, do you know how to do this in the organization? So is your SharePoint accessible? Is your Power App accessible? Is your training portal accessible so that employees with disabilities can take their training? These are all kind of CTO level conversations now. And so the thing I'd like you just to think about as an audience watching and online, you know, in the tech sector, again, we talk about systems integrators, the people building the rigor of technology, the infrastructure within organizations. They need to know that there's a CTO asking for that and that there is an accessibility policy. And I always talk to our sellers about creating a circular argument. Are you offering accessibility up front, and are you encouraging your customers to come back to you with their accessibility requirements? And that can be relatively scary for a seller, because it's like, oh, hang on, I might be putting up a reason not to buy our product. Yeah, I might be putting up a false thing, but actually we've got to move past that. You know, it's just, and the more that organizations, when they sign up to things like disability confident, valuable 500, and say, we are a disability confident organization, it's got to start appearing in the rigor of process. And I think as Microsoft, when I reflect on kind of when I joined Microsoft, I didn't know what an executive sponsor was. I came from the technology world, the assistive technology. I was on my knees next to wheelchairs, clamping computers onto wheelchairs, setting people up with their solution for the inaccessibility. And then I honestly worked out relatively quickly when I joined Microsoft, I'm not going to make any progress unless I've got executive sponsorship. And those sponsors were IT people, sellers, marketers. And I think when we educate people on disability inclusion, this kind of this is us concept, this is not just an externality, this is not just us meeting legal requirement, but we employ disability talent in this organization. We've all got a game to play here. People start to kind of find their swim lane. I'm probably going to say that a few times. It's not because of Tucker, I promise.
No, that's fine.
Your turn. My swim lane. Like, you can't go to a marketer and say, you know, what's the WCAG conformance for this social media post? That's just a pointless conversation. But you can say, what are the 3 rules of just putting out accessible social media, and what would it take for us to have accessible comms by default? Let's go and talk to people about that. And I think when I think that these are 3 leaders who kind of, there wasn't any arm twisting, was there?
No, not really. Digging the ribs for the banner.
but with very little conversation, I think you started taking our narrative on accessibility and kind of seeing what we were doing, going, okay, here's what I want to do. Is that fair, Ruth?
Yeah, definitely. You start where you are, use what you've got, do what you can, and then go around again. It comes back to what you've just said about that loop of, you know, you've got a buyer saying, I want this from an accessibility point of view. You've got a seller saying, oh, but I can only get to here. But it's about working together to keep the whole ecosystem moving in the right direction.
I mean, I have the privilege, because we put so much effort into this conversation at Microsoft, like, people always take the calls. And so as I speak to our partner ecosystem around the world, I'm talking to them now about, like, well, what can you do for customers on accessibility? And they know what they can do, but they don't tell anyone. They don't list it. Yeah, it's like it's a reactive industry today. Yeah, it's not a proactive industry. And I think if we're going to make any progress on this, business leaders need to start demanding and pulling that proactivity a bit more out of people, but only in the swim lane that they're in. And I think this is this feels to me, and the reason Mark made that joke before I started, is like it's a bit of a moment for us where we've done all the engagement, we've met all the customers globally, and the patterns are emerging. Where it's let's think in horizons. Let's make sure that we're not talking about complex technical maturity models. We're helping professionals with what they're trying to do, with their bit of it, and then engaging them with partners with the capability to support them with their aims.
Yeah, and I think for me, that meeting we had at your offices, we're known as an enabler in the business. Actually, I walked out of that room going, I know now how to enable and what I need to do. Because it just, the moment happened for me, which then said, right, the position I'm in workplace, I can go and make things happen, and which support our aims, support the purpose of what we're trying to achieve, but I know my place in doing that. Without being pulled into an office and going, can you do this or can you do that? It dawned on me, really, right, and this is the opportunity. And it felt, a calling sounds very dramatic, but it just felt like I could just go and get on with it, and I had the support around me.
I genuinely put that down to your D&I culture. I genuinely think that when the first time I ever met Tucker, he was like, I'm a blind individual using an iPhone, accessing my work, and I don't know anything about Windows, Hector. And if I'm going to be a D&I advocate, I need to be better at this. Sorry, I just think there's that forceful people with disabilities talking about like what the progress they want to see in a constructive way in their part of the business is really starting to have the impact we want it to.
And just put Tucker, because we keep mentioning him, and if he's watching, he's going to be
I know.
cockahoo. But you know, when I joined BP 2 years ago, I was told, oh, there's this great guy, Tucker, who's going to work for you in your team. He's 80% blind. And I was like, oh, okay. So I then literally had to have the conversation because I'd not worked with someone who was blind like that. So I kind of, you know, the obvious questions, okay, how can I support? What do I need to do? And then I said, I really would like to understand what it means to you. And he goes, I'll show you. And he's got an app on his phone that showed the blackness on his phone of what he could see. And at that point, I went, got it. Okay. I now know where you're coming at.
Very good. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up with you folks because we've got another video to play on Horizon 3. I'm really sorry. Ruth, did you have any closing remarks? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I would just say be visible. So if you're a leader, and whether that's with lived experience or as an ally, if you can, then be visible because it makes a huge difference.
And John?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, I guess just one thing really, I was just reflecting, I really like as well as the horizons, I like the split by role, because I think one of the problems I keep bumping into is we keep trying to eat the whole thing in one go.
Yeah.
And actually, if I even just take my own role, we're going to spend a load of money on technology and we're going to build some things anyway. We might as well go and build them in an accessible way. It seems like a good idea. So, and I think it just takes a little bit more thought and planning and visible people that make it okay to do that.
This is going to be the session with the sound bites. I love it. All right, we're going to move to Horizon 3. So we were honoured to have Mel from VLM. They've just changed names. VML, the new version of Wonderman Thompson from WPP, the CEO. And we've got the Jonathan Castleman from HSBC to talk about the third horizon. Run VT.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Mel Edwards. I'm the global president of VML. Probably worth me just saying what VML is. It's a creative company that really focuses on connected experiences. And what I mean by that is, you know, looking at brand experience, the customer experience, and also commerce and how you join up that total experience. And my role in that is making that work and function throughout our entire organization of 30,000 people. We have fantastic brands that we have worked with for a very long time, and we are super proud of those clients, such as HSBC, working with JC, Microsoft. We work with brands globally like KitKat, Dell, Intel. So really great brands that we support across all of those areas.
I'm Jonathan Castleman. I head up global brand at HSBC for HSBC Group. We live, actually interestingly for this conversation, because it's about how do we communicate. We live within the global communications and brand function. And we sit at an enterprise level across the organization, which allows us to touch the whole company and think about our business from the aspects of our employees, our communities, and our customers, and what we need to do to be relevant and engaging to all of them.
I guess what we want to dive into particularly today is around this brand and communications story. You know, how do you start to weave this in? The world around you is changing, and brand is obviously part of that, sort of reflecting back what's going on.
If you looked at broader inclusion and then digital accessibility as part of that, but broader inclusion, we had employee resources group in HSBC that I didn't find out about till 6 months after I joined, which had, you know, we have one Balance, which has 15,000 members. You know, we have the Pride group, the Pride ERG, which has many more than that. So inclusion, and those have been around for more than 10 or 15 years. So I think being inclusive as an organization is part of our DNA, and it should, I think for most companies, I don't think any company sets out to be excluding of ethnicity or disability. I just think they're not maybe as conscious of it as they should be in the past. And So I'm not surprised. It is extremely important in its broadest context. You know, my boss sits on the main executive board of HSBC. His boss is the group CEO. This is an agenda item for him. It's in his objectives, and it's kind of, we wire it into our operating model for the organization. It means that we have communities in our organizations that understand authentically, have walked in those shoes, have lived those experiences. That means that when we do communicate about them, or we build the tools to alleviate some of those challenges, it's from a first-hand basis, not an implied knowledge basis, and that's key. So we have a really simple purpose, which is opening up a world of opportunity, which was also our customer promise. And we decided 3 years ago with my head of digital accessibility that our ambition was really simple, is to be the most digitally accessible bank in the world. Because what could be a better living proof point of us opening up a world of opportunity than being the most accessible bank that we could possibly be? I mean, it was actually us walking and living our purpose, and that's how we think about it. From a product point of view, the way we do that is we build the products with the end user. We don't build it for the end user, and that's really important. I think if you think about digital accessibility, the customer journeys and the products and services, we're building those, and it's part of our, you know, we call them FIMs. There are sort of regulations internally that everything has to be accessible. So there's no, even if it's not a law in a country, we are imposing it so that we are accessible everywhere. So it's our standards, it's our base level that we want to go to. And you know, it's as important that we apply the same to our internal systems so that people can work here. And you know, I've talked about training the thousands. We've got a huge sort of internal training program that we're doing, which is important because they're our biggest ambassadors. And we're just starting an internship program for people with disabilities so that we can start to bring those skills into the organization properly. And so look, there's lots more that we need to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, we want our customers and our partners like Mel to keep on pushing us to do more and be better. And likewise, we will obviously push all of our partners and suppliers and everything else to be inclusive by design as well.
I think that's right. I think from an internal perspective, and I put my WPP hat on now for a second, you know, and I think about Microsoft's Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3. We are absolutely on that journey and working with people like Rachel, who's our CIO at WPP. You know, she's embedding that into our entire organization. But what I think is interesting for the, I guess, the IT function and the marketing function is to be more connected on this, because I think sometimes the IT function in companies will absolutely, you know, if it doesn't sit under somebody brilliant like a JC, for instance, that you can go, actually, I need to tick a box and be accessible, but actually it needs to run through the entire organization, which is when I think companies like, you know, myself, my business sort of comes in, and I think we also are on that journey. And similarly, I think we need to push harder and do more for everybody. But there's so much more we can do. And I think using technology, as JC said at the beginning, that's an enabler for us. That should be an enabler for everybody to be able to activate this for so many audiences.
Thank you so much for giving us the time and so much for sharing your insights as well. So thank you both.
So to wrap up, I really want you to, well, two things. If you're a business leader or somebody working in the technology sector, somebody from our partner network globally, open up that conversation around accessibility no matter which room you're in. You know, whether you're in HR, whether you're in IT, the office of the CTO, have a conversation, but have the right conversation with people about accessibility and what the deliverable is there. If you're an accessibility professional watching this, lift your horizons. You know, so many of us are working kind of on a project, but what we start to see is that actually we as accessibility professionals really can start to have system-wide impact on organizations if we engage the right level of executive sponsorships, as we've seen sharing their stories today. I would encourage you to knock on the door. You know, I have been knocking on doors for 6 years. I've got Microsoft behind me, so maybe so it seems easier sometimes. But people are receptive to the conversation if you're having the right conversation. And I think from there, it's how do we then map out across the horizons to create this systemic inclusion of people with disabilities at work, and brand experiences. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching online. And we're going to take a quick break in the room and assemble a panel for some feedback. Thanks so much.